Go. All right, mic test, mic testing. Are we testing the mics?
Yeah, we're going live. We live. We good. See.
I forgot the music and now we're hot.
All right. I love shows right out of the theater.
You like the post show?
It's so fresh on the brain, and the movie went long enough that I actually got to listen to a breakdown on the way home too of perfection. So it was great. I got we got the live X, and then we got the Pearl review coming in hot off that Sneak Peak of Maxxxine, which is gonna be phenomenal, man. I'm very psyched for it. But yeah, walking out of the theater reviews where it's just so fresh in the brain.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it took a little setup here to get everything back fired up, but yeah, definitely psyched to talk about this.
And you always see people doing this, respect to the other YouTubers that literally walk out of the theater and hold their phone up to their face. And they're like, we're just doing this like right now. But we got a studio, let's use it.
I agree. Yeah, so just got out of the post-X special screening. I don't know if anybody else out there went. I saw folks on Reddit are talking about it already.
Yeah.
The X sneak peek following the show. I mean, everybody went for that, obviously. Yeah, that was an interesting screening. It was interesting. I mean, interesting in a good way.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we show our faces. But you made a cool comment that stuck in my head. But props to the light switch patrol at Alamo Drafthouse, South Lamar. That when the sneak peek came on, they turned the lights back off.
Right.
I was a little worried about that. And someone read our mind.
Yeah.
And oh wait, hit the switch again.
Well, that's what we love about Alamo Drafthouse is they care about the presentation. It's very important.
And they were all for it. And Marvel kind of trained a lot of people for the whole sitting through the credits. But the positive byproduct of that is I kind of like just sitting in the credits and letting everything digest, even if there's not going to be a scene. Today there was a scene, but I noticed lately I've just been kind of sitting there and letting it, just letting the sizzle just kind of go through me. Oh, there we are. All right.
That was not a smooth transition, but we're on.
Yeah, no, we are live.
Sorry about that, folks.
I was looking down and I was doing stuff with my hands. So, as you can see, we're half in studio, half remote studio, but it's working out. But we were just too excited to wait till our live show to talk about this. But yeah, tonight we went to the 7 p.m. screening, Alamo South Lamar of X fan event with a special sneak peek of Maxxxine, right out of the gate. And I think it was great, man. I think it was really, really good. It was solid. I forgot how much I loved this film.
So you enjoyed it more on the second viewing. How many times have you seen it now?
This was probably, honestly, the third time. I've seen it once, the original screening, actually 4 times. I saw it twice the in theaters, one at home, but it was spaced out a lot. That it's been a while.
Oh, you saw it twice in theaters.
I did see it twice in theaters.
I remember when you got out of the screening, you texted me and you said that was nuts. That was wacky. That was wild.
Yeah. And it's funny, and now you remember what I said when you after the film. I remember now what you said after the film tonight. You're like, they just need to re-release this and just let it sit in theaters.
For sure.
And just like they should have this was great that it was a fan event. It was packed, but what was to stop them to just let it run for 2 weeks, 14 days,
or just or maybe in the 2 weeks up to the run up of Maxxxine? Why not? Now I don't know if there is opposing studios here, that makes a difference, because I think I was watching the trailer earlier. It looks like Maxxxine is a Universal movie. I don't think the rest were Universal films. Now maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think that yes, why not just put this in the theaters and let it run? I think that this is this is probably the 5th or 6th time I've watched it, but the second time in the theater. What I really love about this movie, and that I forget, is that it's really two halves of a movie. And I really enjoy that structure. I think that's not everybody can pull that off, and not everybody would even attempt it or have the balls to do that. You've got your the first half where we are making the adult film, and it's all about it's almost like it's less about the adult film and more like a metaphor for let's make indie films, let's save cinema kind of a vibe. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like you could take the entire adult film aspect out of it, and it could just be they were making an indie horror film, and it has that feeling.
And they brought it up a couple times, in film. They brought that up a few times.
You have the director, RJ, who is out to make an adult film that supersedes any other adult films, right?
Yeah.
How great... I wish I could channel that feeling once again, where it's just all you need is a camera and a microphone, a couple of friends, and you're going to save cinema.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's funny they say that. There's the one shot when they're all walking out of the van, and it reminded me so much of that BTS shot that you see floating around for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where they were showing the final scene when Leatherface was chasing the truck driver, and you had her in the truck, and it was just a guy with a camera, the director, and a guy with a boom.
Yeah.
And that was the picture.
Yeah.
That was yeah.
And it's funny, if you look at, just to sidebar here, if you look at some of those old Texas Chainsaw Massacre behind the scene images, it's just guys in button up short sleeve shirts with them tucked in operating the camera,
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
It's just, again, saving cinema. But you really bring up a really good point. It's really cool when they do. I think horror movies try this. Not a lot are successful at pulling it off. I think Abigail wanted to a little bit, but I didn't feel that. But that feeling you're talking about, I think the most successful one before this was From Dusk Till Dawn, where the first half of the film felt like a second half of the film. And on that one, the rumor was, I don't know if this was true or not, that, Quentin Tarantino directed the first half kind of, and Robert Rodriguez did the second half. I don't know how much of that is true or not, but it felt like two separate films. And this one felt like a unified vision, but two separate, like you said, two halves of a whole.
Right. I was thinking Death Proof. It felt
Death Proof.
Or you have two halves of a film,
Yeah, and they actually pulled that off, and then just said, screw it, right there, you see right there, two dynamite double features right there in the back.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something. Go ahead.
Sidebar. Before we get too far from Dusk Till Dawn, because I had to mention this to you, have you ever seen Full Tilt Boogie?
No.
Okay. That's something I got to share with you. It exists only on DVD special features now. The Lost Art of the DVD special feature. It's a full-length documentary that they made about the behind the scenes of From Dusk Till Dawn. So just to confirm or disprove your theory, you will see that Quentin did not direct the first half of that movie. But
Oh, really? Okay.
I want you to see this documentary because it's special. What's up, Jess Lockhart? Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, I love the cat in the helmet avatar. But yeah, I would love to see Full Tilt Book. I've heard it in Legend of Folklore, but have never seen it.
Anyway, shout out to DVD special features. It's a lost art, and I miss them.
Yeah, I miss that a lot. But I'm going to say something, man, and I need you to. I know you have like these big like say what reactions. I'm going to need you to shoot on me. Be 100% honest. I could be because I just walked out of the theater and I'm having the energy. We got our tickets from Maxxxine, so I'm kind of like in a revved up state. This could go down as the most creative horror trilogy of all time. Is that a fair? And that's a lot, right? Because we know horror have tons of installments, but if you were to take any 1, 2, and 3 of a straight up horror film, is that off base?
No. I think that I have no heat with that assessment. I think that I was thinking while I was watching it earlier, I was watching, if you watch, it's interesting because you have X, which was the first film in the trilogy, right? And I've always thought that X, it was better to watch X and then Pearl. But then I watched Pearl again a few other times, and I realized, actually, it is better to watch Pearl first. But you can't release Pearl first. You know what I mean? You can't put that out as the first movie in the trilogy. So it's almost like, and I think Ty West, being the horror fan he is, understood that to make a proper or like a really powerful and effective horror trilogy, it has to be first movie, prequel, then sequel to the first movie. You know? I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre figured this out, although they didn't quite execute it properly. But I think that's the way you got to do it, or at least in this particular trilogy. I can't think of another trilogy that I think. Now, mind you, I'm thinking trilogy. If they made 7 of them, it doesn't count, right?
Correct. I totally agree with that.
I think there's only one other thing that could come close, and we won't know until October, and that'll be the Terrifier trilogy.
That's a big one. And both Terrifier 3 and Maxxxine, they kind of have to stick this. These are very important films. Like, they have to stick the landing. And I think they both brought the heat in 1 and 2, but you don't want the last one to be like, oh, they almost had it. They almost pulled it off, but they fizzled out. And we don't want that.
Right.
And those are great, you know, Damien Leone and Ty West. I feel like that's like the future of horror because, man, as we found out, like the bad news kind of today, how you know Crystal Lake prequel series is kind of like falling apart, like it's cursed, and like nobody could effectively do an IP anymore. You're going to need people like Damien Leone and Ty West creating these original films to keep the genre strong.
Right.
Because I don't think you can rest on you said something that stuck in my head that I could never forget. Like you realize that Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and Michael Myers are the equivalent of Dracula, Wolfman, and Frankenstein from the 30s and 40s.
Right.
And they're kind of at that, and I was like, wow, that one just like kind of really hit home for me. So there's like a level of comfort knowing that you're creating kind of this unified universe. So it does feel like it's an ongoing story, but it doesn't just feel like another installment. And this one, like I was watching the history of Pearl, the character through X, and we're talking about she was born sometime in the 1880s to 1890s. They can't nail it down, and now we're going to move fast forward. We went through X in 79, and we're going to land in Maxxxine, which is going to be somewhere in the 1980s. I mean, we have 100-year history of this universe,
right?
And Pearl somehow is passing the baton to Maxxxine, which is awesome because it's the same actress, but it's different characters, and it's showing you in a way how history is doomed to repeat itself if it's kind of like if it's not learned and this was a mystery, nobody knows what happened at the farm and they really drove that home, and now it's going to pass on into the 80s. And the question is, is Maxine going to feel the same wrath of Pearl, or is she going to break that curse? But man, dude, it's like a 100-year story encapsulated in these 3 films, and that's why I never felt like I've seen a trilogy like that created such a rich timeline and that didn't rely on any kind of gimmick.
No, they're all unique films that you can watch separately or together. But that's crazy. I didn't realize this is a 100-year trilogy. Now, something just came to me. And this is totally feasible. Is it possible that there is more of a connection with Maxine and Pearl than has been revealed yet?
I think it's very possible. Like we know, like
will we get that as a big reveal in the next one in Maxine?
That would be incredible. But you feel like that could happen, right?
It feels
she was obviously looked at her as some like kindred spirit or soul, like she wanted hers. There was something special about Maxine that Pearl wanted her. She wanted her over Jenna Ortega, right? She didn't want Lorraine locked in the dungeon. She wanted Mia Goth. She wanted Maxine. Why? They could drive that home because it was a big deal of the preacher playing the entire time, right? And then that was the big reveal at the end of X. This is a spoiler review. The big reveal is just like he is the daughter of that preacher, of that probably is somewhat of the local town preacher. There has to be some kind of connection there, and it's very possible because in the sneak peek to Maxine, that was 1959-ish, right, when they showed her dancing, and she had her doing a line, and the preacher, her father was like, "You need to say that line like you mean it." Yeah. But there's definitely some potential crossover there because we don't know what Pearl was doing between after the ending of Pearl and 1979. There's a big chunk of time. We know a Bohemian was unalived, and they found his car in there, and we found him in the basement. But there's a lot of story in there, and it would probably be really tempting for him to do this. But man, I'd love if they just put a bow and this is just a sequel.
Yeah.
But I would also love what you're saying and just like, oh, by the way, there's a connection there. You can have that horror movie, I Am Your Mother moment. I know she's not going to be the mother, but that connection there.
Related
I would
somehow.
Somehow right? Related.
That
because they have the same, they both feel like they're stars. They both know that they're meant for more of this. At the end, Pearl kind of gave up on her dreams, and Maxine fought through that. I was watching the history, and Pearl's last moments as Maxine was about to drive over her head was just like, this is going to happen to you too. But Pearl was also watching Maxine escape the farm, which she never did. So what does that mean? What does that mean in this universe of choices that she actually does escape the farm? What does that mean for that character?
For Maxine or for Pearl?
For Maxine. Pearl never got that closure.
Well,
Maxine clearly heard that, right? You think she heard that when she was before she ran, and that was her way of shushing her? She's like, this is going to happen to you too?
I think she probably did hear it. I mean, we heard it, so she must have heard it. But I think what I really love, especially watching, look, we could have sat there if we watched the full film of X, and then they played the Maxine the first 5 minutes or so, the opening scene, basically, right? I mean, It felt so connected. Like it felt like perfect sequel to X. You know what I mean? Like it fit so perfectly, and it was funny because the first thing that came to mind was the stage door opening, right? The stage door opening to reveal Maxine to come in for the audition, and it's like all 3 of the movies start with that shot, with sort of like, I think X starts through the barn doors, and
the barn doors. You're right.
Pearl starts through. I think it starts through the barn doors as well, and then this one starts through the stage doors,
which felt very much like a big echoey barn. Wow, good call.
I loved that. I love Maxine so much already after seeing the first 5 minutes. You know,
Yeah, it
it's
is
such
wild,
a great
man.
payoff to X already in that just a little bit we saw. Like, I feel already that it's one of the best horror sequels of all time.
Isn't that wild?
I
That we
feel it.
felt,
It feels like
I
it.
felt that too.
Yeah.
We were just like, they have to stick.
Yeah,
the
you were just
landing.
like, I'm going to see this twice for sure.
Yeah, you have to, because here's the best part of this whole X experience. Like, I don't know about you, but I had no idea. I was in the middle of Ty West creating this universe, because didn't you tell me to stick around for the post credits, and I had no idea, and then like,
right.
Surprise, we have the trailer to Pearl, and they filmed that back to back, I believe.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I had no idea. And now, ironically, after X, but they told us stick around after X to watching Maxine.
Yeah.
And you have the benefit of just like, it dovetailed so nicely to what we just experienced. But this wasn't filmed at any time, right? This was filmed completely separate. We've been waiting for this for a couple of years coming down the pipe.
Right. Since they announced it.
Yeah.
This is one of the movies I've been looking forward to more than anything else that comes up.
Yeah.
I think that first scene was great. I like it. Just, I don't know, man. It just felt like you and me we love stories about Hollywood, and this just felt that whole thing. You know what I mean? And like, she goes in, does the audition, and she seems to nail it. And then they're just like, take off your top. And she's like, of course, because, I'm Maxine. You know what I mean? And then, like, she goes out and tells all those other girls to screw off that she got the part. I mean, that's awesome.
Oh, it was so great.
Yeah. I loved that opening scene so much. I cannot wait to see all of Maxine. July 1st.
Yeah, you're getting the early access. You're getting the early access screening, which is going to be great. Yeah. We've heard people say this, and you and I both kind of worked in the industry. We've always heard the rumors and then just never really understand that, of just like, Hollywood hates projects about Hollywood, but there's so many great projects about Hollywood, because we know, like, sometimes the behind the scenes is more interesting than what we see on camera.
Wait, do they hate it or do they love it? I thought they loved it.
I would think they love the rich storytelling is just so good, but everyone was always like, no, we hate projects about Hollywood, but I don't think that's true. And again, this is just like,
I feel like every movie about Hollywood always gets nominated for an Oscar, except for Babylon, but that was because of all the diarrhea. If you didn't have diarrhea 3 or 4 times in the first 5 minutes, it might have got over.
It definitely might have got over. It had so much potential and just went completely off the rails. But, dude, it just like jumping back into X, and I know you as a filmmaker, and we're talking about Hollywood, loving stuff about Hollywood. There was just something about how strong that beginning scene was just getting the crew ready, like you said, getting the camera ready, getting in the van, like you said earlier, just like, we're going to go make a film and save Hollywood. That, man, it just made you feel like, Pluto in, Animal House, like, let's go. Like, yeah. I felt like we were going on a ride.
There's a feeling you can immediately identify with if you know this feeling, and I'm going to describe the feeling to you. And if you know this feeling of packing into a vehicle full of equipment and supplies, and going to a house in the middle of nowhere, and sleeping in your clothes, and working all day, filming stuff all day and night, not showering, just for the sake of getting something shot over the course of a couple days.
Oh yeah, it's such a great feeling. It really is. You could be the most uncomfortable sleep, and you're on a diet of like freaking M&Ms and just bad sandwiches on crafty kind of stuff, but
absolutely, and
you're just feeding on that feeling.
Yep. You're lucky enough if someone's grandma lives in town and they swing by and she feeds y'all something like that, it brought back. I really connected with that part of it. That's what I really
felt
loved
that
about it. These weren't dirty perverts. These were like independent filmmakers, man. They were trying to change the world.
100%, man.
You know?
When the Wayne character was cutting that bologna, and he just had the big bologna loaf and was slapping on the bread, I'm like, crafty. There it is, right there.
Yeah,
and that sandwich looks so good, and that's what he was feeding, to one of his stars. He made her a sandwich right there.
How much do you think they wanted Matthew McConaughey for that role?
Oh my god!
This was like great value, Matthew McConaughey. But he did a great job.
He really did, man. He really,
and he's the dad in Pearl, right?
I believe. Oh, is he? I think he is.
I think he's the dad in Pearl.
In the man, and there's just something for that is just like the whole, again, stuff we talked about this with our Donnie Darko breakdown of like how multiverse works. Like I think Ty West is kind of like subconsciously trying to say we're like these same people filming, playing out these different dramas, but we're the same people going through some of the same dramas, just experiencing it from different perspectives. Even if it's just like, even if there's never any payoff that, Wayne was the EP in X of, the farmer's daughter, but he was actually the farmer's father.
He was the farmer.
Right. He was the farmer that had the daughter. Yeah. I was just like, that's so subtle. And I was like, that is enough that is the payoff.
Yeah.
What a great line that Wayne had in that movie when he's just like, you know what? I've been 42 and I've been 29, but you've only 23, but you've only been 23 and not 42. So I'm going to tell you a story. I was like, man, what a great line.
Great dialogue. Jeez. Who is that? Ty West that writes this? I don't know if he writes the script himself, but that is great dialogue.
He was listed as the writer, the director, and the editor. He got a credit on all three. What does Robert Rodriguez call that? Chopped, shot, and cut, or what? There's that same feeling where at least he definitely just has like a hand on that, and this is something that's just been percolating in his brain. I'm glad somebody had the balls to give Ty West some cash and share that with the world.
Well, I mean, he's been kicking around for a long time. There's no overnight sensations, and I think after Maxxxine drops, I think you're going to see Ty West's stock go really way up. I don't know what he'll do. I get the vibe that he's a real artist and understands the power of being an artist. And I feel like he might be happy to direct television and then make cheap art films. But I feel like after Maxxxine executing like an amazing horror trilogy like that, I'm sure studios are going to be sending him emails.
Oh, without a doubt.
I'm sure people are reaching out and saying, we got this Camp Crystal Lake mess that we don't know what to do with. Could you help us, Ty West?
Oh my God, yeah, and I know you brought that before, of just like give him that franchise and bring it back to its roots like that, to have somebody who like that has that understanding, that sensibilities, like he filmed something in the 30s, 40s, and then he jumped to the 70s and jumped to the 80s.
Which is exactly what they need, right, for this, whatever they're trying to do. Honestly, let me tell you what, like for a shoot, I'm against this whole Crystal Lake TV show thing. I think it's a terrible idea. But if you're going to get somebody to do it, might as well get Ty West.
Yes. Yeah, well, I don't think it's going to happen, man. I'm now at
Good.
this point.
I think it's a terrible idea. It shouldn't happen.
Unlucky 13. Like, we'll never get that 13th installment, which is what everybody wanted. I just wanted it for the completionist. But I guess if you count the remake, does that count as 13? I don't know. It's debatable.
I mean, I think it does count as 13.
Right.
I don't see why it wouldn't.
But you know what? Honestly, it is, and as much as I'm a mark for Jason, which I am, but I'm also a mark for the Universal, I'm fine with that. Those movies live there. But if you're going to have, like, and we talked about this, you're going to have this IP fatigue everyone's dealing with. I feel so refreshed when you walk out of an original property and it's great. Yeah. There's just something that it just gives you hope for cinema.
Well, that's what you go to the movies for.
Yeah.
To watch original, to see something new. To have to experience something new, I think that's the vibe that a lot of people are getting off of the IPs, and that's a lot of the reason why movies are down. No one, studios have made us think that we should have no faith in an original story. You know what I mean? It used to be that there was something original and someone would see it at work and they'd come to work on Monday at the water cooler and they're getting a sip. And it's like, did you see this movie? No. Oh, it's really good. Really? And then the following weekend, somebody else would go see it, and it would go and it would spread. And that's how films made money. And now it's just like, what is the biggest, most well-known property we can get?
That we own.
Yeah.
Hey, do we own that?
Yeah. Let's make a $200 million version of it. And if it doesn't make $100 million on the first weekend, we're sending it straight to 8-track. It's going straight to streaming. It's going right to stars. We don't care.
Yeah.
That's a terrible life for a movie.
Yeah. I miss, as much as people would, I don't know. Bob, like you called it, man. Resurrect Bob Evans. You need the Marv Schwartz. You need these EPs with balls, man. That just, and I think that's why I'll pretty much go see anything that's A24, because you feel like they bring to the table that they're not worried about these giant budgets. They're worried about story, and they're worried about just like, let's just get it out there and try not, Blumhouse, let's try not to spend that much money. And it forces this creativity. So the balls of these, these producers, and then the lack of budget that forces the creativity, that's how we're getting this magic. I mean, even back in the day, that there wasn't no big budgets, and the ones that were big budgets, but the Heaven's Gate scandal, right? It was just like that type of shit. And just like when you're spending all this money and it ends up not being that good anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, how about celebrities out there? Why don't you go out? I think this would be a great idea, and you would help save cinema if you would just take a chance and be in a small film for SAG wages. You know what I mean? Spend a week on a film and boost its portfolio, and actually get some big and new ideas, some eyes, because Hollywood revolves around stars. That's just the way it is. But if stars only go to IP films for the paychecks, it's just like, well, all these other films are going to just disappear.
And it sucks, and you're just like, but you probably have their managers and their agents saying, nah, you don't need to do this. But sometimes they're the problems too. Sometimes they're just as bad as the studio trying to protect their brand, protect their client. And man, that's the shits. I mean, just think of the casting that Ty West, like he just did, that, he didn't even realize how much Jenna Ortega was about to blow up.
That was kind of it was trippy seeing her in it now.
Yeah.
Considering that she's now one of the most famous people in the universe.
Yeah.
And she had this tiny part in X.
Yeah, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't a huge part. It was a very important part. And I remember seeing an interview with her that she thinks a lot, her getting the role of Wednesday, because she did a Zoom call audition, for Tim Burton while on the set of X, and she had like the blood on her face, and she thought like that was going to hurt it, and in a way it probably helped her nail that role.
Yeah.
But man, looking at her now, she has that star quality, maybe because it's already drilled into our brain. But I have to say, man, like I told you in this, I whispered it to you, right? This was just stellar casting. They all did feel like stars. Like they felt like independent filmmakers that got a hold of these, these two women, Brittany Snow, right, and Mia Goth, and their male lead. What was his name? The Marine.
Kid Cudi?
Yeah. I mean, dude, that's like, they just oozed the machismo for this film.
Yeah.
He was great. He was so good in this.
Yeah, it was really good.
Like, really just Kid Cudi, that's right, he was. I mean, they just oozed. The casting, everybody was like right on the mark.
It was. I mean, you know what? That's the mark of good directing, is casting.
Yeah.
Good directing is good casting first.
Well, I mean, I think it has something to do with, like you said, right? We heard the stories of, our friends talking about working on with Quentin Tarantino, and him talking about, I'm a director, not a selector. I'm gonna shoot the scene as that I need and not get lucky shooting it. You can almost say that with casting too, right?
Yeah.
Like, you need to be able to look at that character and see the character, and that's the Bob Evans effect, like you said, of just like, going with your gut of just like, this looks right, this feels right
through the lens, and you have to understand that. You have to understand that it's all about the look through the lens. You know what I mean? A person and a piece of film of a person and a videotape of a person are not the same thing. You understand what I'm saying? It's like it's all about what they are on tape. It's just that perspective. You have to be able to separate the person and their art.
Man.
Except for R. Kelly. Don't do that.
Yes, exactly. Don't do that. Oh man. That being said, I guess
what was the line at the beginning of the Maxxxine preview? It was you're not famous until everyone thinks you're a monster.
Oh yeah, the Betty Davis line, right?
Yeah.
And I think she kind of leaned into that, right? Because we talked about this earlier, that she apparently an extra was like hit too hard or something along those lines in there, and then they had that line. And then it's funny, I saw a short when I was looking for stuff to play to think about Pearl. I found a short by her, and it was kind of strange because she has that same high-pitched voice, but along with a British accent.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was saying she thinks that it's good on set to have a little bit of animosity, a little bit of friction. She's like, not too much where it feels like not a good work environment, but she feels like you need a little bit of that. And I think her theory, I think the theory of iron sharpens iron, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
I can totally see that. I think that, especially when you're acting, I am not a classically trained actor by any means, but I can see just when you have built-in animosity to work off of, it gives you some juice. It gives you some gas.
Yeah. I mean, that's again, well, the world is pro wrestling, and
the world is pro wrestling.
We've always seen that, like, if there's a little bit of a rivalry going on, whether it's Hogan and Savage or Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, where it's a little bit of a real rivalry there, it'll come through if they're professional enough to go past that and still, for their art, show that. And I think it makes it a little easier to get really snug and safely snug, because I gotta say, maybe it's the wrestler in me. If Mia Goth was in character as Maxxxine and punched me in the throat, I think I'd be okay with it.
Oh, of course.
Right? Like, I mean, I was almost confused, like, why?
But I feel like you would take any throat punch, honestly. As long as the camera's rolling.
Yes.
I feel like you would, but for sure. You would sell Mia Goth's throat punch like nobody's business.
Yeah, and it's just like, you almost kind of like have that, what they used to say, hey, let's save the apologies for the back, and I wouldn't even go up to her afterwards and be like, oh, that was great, like that. I think I'd wait till after principal photography is wrapped.
Right.
And then I'd go out, and just like find a way to just like, hey, that was great.
Especially if it felt like it worked. You don't want to disturb that.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
You want to just let it flow. I mean, like Daniel Day-Lewis comes in character, right, to the whole movie, and he won't respond to anybody. He never leaves character. Acting is a funny business, man.
It is, and if you're able to pull it off, the Vince Vaughns of the world that just go on there and just play around and see what happens. But he's always kind of playing a version of himself, and it always works really well, and I got no heat with that. But then I remember hearing the story from Jamie Foxx and Leonardo DiCaprio talking about on the Django Unchained, where Leo was, went up to Jamie. He's like, I'm not comfortable, calling you the N-word. I'm just real. And then Jamie Foxx kind of gave him the card. He's like, look, this is not you doing it. This is, if you owned a slave, this is what you would do. And he said, man, he came on the set the next day and treated me like shit. Like he completely no-sold him, and he's just like, okay. Sometimes, and maybe it is just for certain roles, or maybe, I don't know if that's for all roles, but for some roles that have to be really intense, you don't want the viewer to ever be like, that feels like you're acting.
Well, the thing is, it's like, and this is like I don't know how to explain this, but it's like, when you're trying to act on camera and you're trying to be good, you're a talented actor, the acting has to like shoot out of you. It's not just like, you don't just do acting. Acting has to shoot out of your body and into the camera. Yeah, do you understand what I know you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, 100%. And 100%. It has to,
like whether you're a good actor or not, you have to be able to shoot the acting out of your body into the camera. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, yeah, it's not
just it's a physicality.
Here,
it's a physicality that is not achievable by most people.
No. It's almost it's that Donnie Darko where you have to see like the invisible tunnel going through your chest, but it actually has to go into the camera and through the crowd, into the crowd of the viewers, and actually feel that.
Yeah.
Because if you're just in that space, that's when people saying that's a bad actor.
That's a bad actor. That's the room. That's Tommy Wiseau.
When you're just pretending like that.
But when you're a talented actor, you just do so much, even in the moments where you're not even on camera or it's not your part. It just escapes your body and just flows into the camera. It's just something different, I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like maybe we should get an actor on the show and they could tell us what that's all about.
What does that actually mean?
Like, I feel like Chuckles is like that. Friend of the show, Chuckles. Not a trained actor, but I feel like he shoots acting out of his body.
He does. It just like he automatically he just feels it.
Yeah.
And he just kind of goes with it.
Right.
He's like, he tries to make that mental connection of what we're going for, what we're trying to do, and then he just goes. And
you can see it. You can see it.
Yeah. In Christmas Business, right? If you're watching this, go to our YouTube page, look up Christmas Business, and watch me as Santa wrestling Chuckles, where he's never been in a match. He's all of a sudden trying to like go through like all these spots, and he was like, sometimes you almost had to reel him back because, like you said, he was just a fire hose, and he was just going.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was almost like he has all this like a baby rattlesnake. I don't know how to hold back the poison I'm shooting into your veins.
Yeah.
Where the adult rattlesnake will just like save a little bit for later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't feel this with these actors. Everybody felt on point. And that being said, like you said, Matthew McConaughey playing that role as that EP. And then I can even see
great
Jackie
value,
Earl.
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, great value, Matthew
or Kirkland
McConaughey.
brand Matthew McConaughey, whichever.
But I could have also seen Jackie Earl Haley, another Texas native playing Howard. But I mean, you can see all this dream casting. But to me, that is not a slight against those actors, because those actors did a phenomenal job. If anything, it's a compliment. It's a compliment to the writer and a compliment to their performances as actors, that you're feeling, like you're almost trying to like up the game of it. It's a yes and it's not a no. For all you improv artists out there, you understand it's never no, it's yes and. You're
right.
Like, yes, this is great, and this.
Right.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
Right. I agree.
Going back, I was looking at I forgot how great that final line is by the sheriff. One goddamned effed up horror picture, and then boom, and then the choice of music. It really
lots of great choice of music in this one.
Yeah,
I love I love the shot. My favorite shot in the film is when they're leaving the strip club, and you've got that sort of like framed up shot of the back of the strip club, and they're all coming out. You walk to the car, and the crane's up, and you just see the oil refineries right there. It's like Houston, Texas.
Yes, you felt it, right? You didn't even need to put that.
And people, and if you don't understand Houston and oil refinery culture, or whatever, you don't understand why there would be a strip club 100 feet from the oil refinery. It's just a thing.
Yeah, especially close to payday. Of course you want them. Of course you want it in walking distance. Yeah, that was a great shot. And then going into again, that was the Bluto moment of like, let's go, because you're like, let's go make a film. You felt that too. But he had a lot of great shots that really kind of stayed.
Like when I watch this movie, it makes me like never want to direct anything again. It's like every shot seems so planned out. And just every shot is a photo. I don't know how to make that kind of a movie where every shot is just a brilliant painting.
Man, you're right. That was that, because that overhead shot with Maxxxine floating in the lake with the gator that's right there, and then the gator just slowly goes, and you can actually, you as the viewer, sees the distance closing, but her as the character does not.
Yeah.
Man, that was so tense. And that was like, that to me, that was almost the Swim Charlie Swim in Jaws, but there was didn't even need the music, because you saw the moving of the water, and that's all you needed. He didn't need the dun 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 dun, but it still gave you that same feeling, because you as the viewer are wanting to be like, swim, Maxxxine, swim. Trust me. Don't look back. Just go.
Or you just start to squeal.
Yeah. Like you just felt that. And man, the intensity of that shot. But it was also a beautiful shot, but also an intense shot.
There's a lot of beautiful shots in this movie. Like, I think it's a really well shot movie.
And right. And people could have been like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, of course it's a beautiful, sunny shot of this giant body of water is almost like nature. But I can challenge that and say, well, what about the beautiful shot of the broken piece of wood with a giant nail right there? That, too, was a beautiful shot, but also in a sense of just like the dread that it created. Like
the shot the shot where Jenna Ortega is going down into the cellar, and you're looking up from the cellar. That's another. Yeah. Like there's tons of shots. The whole thing when Mia Goth or Maxxxine has lemonade with Pearl.
Yeah, it's another one, man.
That whole scene is amazing.
That was something that again, that's another scene that is like the world is pro wrestling, because less was more in that moment, because that was the equivalent of The Rock and Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania when Hulk Hogan was back at that moment, and they just went eye to eye, and they just both kind of looked around. That was it. That was Pearl and Maxxxine, these two major characters over this 100-year arc, are just like nose to nose. And then the tension of just like a slow drink, and she's like, should I be polite? And I'm like, no, man, I got to get out of here. Like the way she was selling the stare, and no words were even said.
And what's beautiful about that is it's only significant if you've seen Pearl. Right. Which, if you're watching these movies in order, you have not seen. So, like I said, it's almost like you have to watch X, then Pearl, then X again to really get the full experience.
It's funny you said that, and I was going to bring this up when you brought it up earlier. Like, how do you create a piece of art, like great cinema like this, that, you basically have to release X first, and then you release Pearl, like you said. But on the other side of the coin, once that cat is out of the bag, you kind of owe it to yourself to watch Pearl first, if that makes sense. Like,
but you've already seen X by that point.
Right, you've already seen X by that point. But that's what I was going to ask you. Like, what if you introduce somebody to this who has never seen this before? Would you tell them to watch Pearl first, or would you tell them to watch X first? Kind of like one, named after you, the Mario Machete cuts. how would you tell them to watch, to consume this now that 2 of the 3 films are already out and the third one's about to be out?
I just said, I think you should watch. If you want to experience this to its full potential, as it should be seen, is you should watch X, then Pearl, then X again, then Maxxine. So you watch X, then Pearl, then X and Maxxine back to back.
That's a Machete cut right there. It's a mini Machete cut.
That's how you do it, man. It has to be because, again, it's just because of the savvy of the filmmakers here that they understand that you have to release. You can't release the prequel before the sequel. You can't release the prequel. What is the main movie in a trilogy called? What is the?
Oh yeah.
What is the main movie in a trilogy called? Prime.
Right. You just called. You can't. Prime is a good name for it.
You can't release movie Prime before the prequel. You have to have the prequel first. No, you actually do Prime, then prequel, then Prime, then sequel. That's like an algebra equation.
It really is. And I love the bouncing back and forth, because if you were to watch Pearl first,
by the way, I would tell people to watch Pearl first now. But I would preface it with, if you're going to watch all 3, watch Pearl first. If you're just asking me for a movie recommendation, I wouldn't say go watch Pearl. If you're asking me for a trilogy of films to watch, I mean, it's not that much. It's 6 hours of whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is the light. Yeah,
Netflix shows are 10 hours. So it's a pretty light watch, but I would recommend now watch Pearl first, then X, then Maxxine. If because no one's gonna do it correctly. I can't tell folks to watch X Pearl, then X again. No one's gonna do that.
I would stick to what you said originally. I think I would think you'd say watch X, Pearl, and then X again. There, almost like you're like a moonshot, like you're trying to go around a planet, so you need that ricochet effect. I think that's the moonshot. X, Pearl, X, Maxxine. I love that as your official Machete cut. Because I don't know, like I would wonder how people, like, it added so much to this trilogy, and we're going to jump and assume Maxxine's going to be great. It added so much that we had the benefit of seeing Pearl in her psychotic older years to have all these kind of aha moments. Like there was a small aha moment, right? When she says, you know how much I hate blondes, but then if you go back, you realize that her breaking point was the moment where she did not become a dancer for the church and they were looking for somebody blonde.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, when we were watching the Maxxine opening scene, the dance that young Maxxine is doing in that video is the dance that Pearl does in the audition.
Man, what?
I noticed that right away.
And all those connectors that are already there, and I have a feeling, like you said, this is not going to be the end of them, and it's going to be more, and it just creates more, like doing a habit that creates all these healthy brainwave, patterns and pathways. I feel like he's doing that, the film version of that, tying these together. So I would love that there was a tie together that will go right from Maxxine, even if you didn't see it in X, it's going to go to Pearl. Like, just it adds to the entire experience.
Yeah.
For him to do this. So it's just props. Man, just props all around. What would you say, like, is it possible, like, what would be a failure with Maxxine at this point? Because it feels like a failure doesn't feel possible. And I feel like now they got, like, again, they got another killer cast for Maxxine, but, like, they they got some dream casting going on there.
Well, yeah, they've got Kevin Bacon, who's an 80s staple, right? Giancarlo Gianelli.
Yeah.
He's in it.
Halsey. So you got
Halsey's
that.
in it, yeah.
You got that traditional, let's get a musician. You got Bobby Cannavale, right?
Bobby Cannavale, I love, yeah. So I
Man,
mean, but I think having Kevin Bacon in there is significant because he screams 80s.
yeah. Oh, 100%, man.
So he gives you that 80s credibility.
I feel like that almost was like it raised everything. Like it truly did. Like the game has been raised for Maxxxine for people to consume this on what traditionally
What's that?
traditionally it raised this game for Maxxxine and is now releasing, which is traditionally reserved for like a Spider-Man movie has always come out kind of like on 4th of July. It's a big weekend. And of course, Minions is going to be the big one, but like if you're talking about that counter programming of like huge films on the 4th of July weekend, it's Maxxxine.
Well, isn't it also Quiet Place?
Quiet Place comes out the week before, but the 4th of July is kind of midweek, that Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, it comes out the Friday before?
Yeah. It's the Friday before, but technically that is going to be head-to-head programming if you're looking for horror versus horror. But I don't know. Quiet Place prequel day one, straight up horror. Gonna watch it. I'm sure it's gonna be great. But there's just something about this movie, just like the filmmakers were so like, we're not making smut. We're making great independent cinema. We're making art. There's something about that's so unique about this being a horror movie, but does it make sense that it really is? Can you be a highbrow horror movie like this, even with having Pearl stab somebody in the neck 23 times, but it still feels highbrow?
I mean, I think that's talent as a horror filmmaker. When you can take smut and make it seem like art. You take smut and you make the smug artsy crowd think it's art. You know what I mean? I feel like that's what a lot of like Dario Argento does. I think like his stuff is violent smut, but pokes because of the way it's shot, because of the way it's edited, the score. People kind of see it as art.
I 100% like this could be shown in like I feel like X and Pearl could be shown in like art house cinema, and people would not be like, "Why are you showing this?" Yeah. I don't feel like anyone would even compete with that. Like I don't think anyone would have a bone of contention.
Well, I mean, they're A24, right? So that's art house for today's crowd.
Yeah, that is 100% art house for today's crowd. Which again, yeah, I mean, that is one we've talked about this before about like going to see a film because of a certain director. A24 is going to see a film because it's A24.
Yeah.
Like have they like for you, like have they hit or missed more? I feel like they've had more hits than misses from a personal standpoint, not just necessarily. I'm not even talking box office. I'm talking about like walking out of the film and having that feeling. I feel like I feel good walking out more than I feel bad walking out on an A24 film. I don't know what year that started, though. That's the question.
I personally, I do not share that sentiment that an A24 film is by nature a quality film. I think that's something that has evolved in the zeitgeist because of their track record and because of the type of films they make, and people have taken it's been marketed into that thought. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think that the studio makes the film. I think that studios can have great ideas and great methods in the way they do things, but to me, it always comes down to the director. I think the director is the author of a film. Whatever studio is, it could be irrelevant.
That's true. I agree with you. You still need a director to pull this off. But maybe them having that track record. I mean, listen, so their highest grossing films in North America. Number 1, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Civil War, Uncut Gems, Lady Bird, Talk to Me, Hereditary, Iron Claw, Moonlight, Midsommar, Ex Machina. I mean, like a big chunk of all those films made you feel like that's a pretty solid top 10, right?
Yeah, those are good films. Those are good films for sure.
And maybe they are the studio equivalent of somebody like a Bob Evans, that they hired enough of the right people, and they have
well, that's the thing, right? Yeah, they're making the right decisions. They're hiring the right people. They're giving money to the folks that can do something special with it, and that's definitely great. But like I said, it just comes down to the folks making films. I feel like that's where it all really begins. You know,
I agree with that, and they just get they're the wind beneath the wings, and giving these directors the platform to try, to ply their trade, for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, they're doing great stuff. I mean, obviously, I love A24. Man, I can't wait to see more of things they do. Hopefully, Maxxxine is a huge hit. I know they're right now sort of reaching to be more mainstream. They want to have commercial success. They want to have IP success. And I would say this: stop trying to buy IPs and create them instead. This is what This is what you're known for. Is inspiring, is creativity. So create IPs rather than I don't know what they're spending on the rights to Friday the 13th or Halloween. I would say take that money and invest in filmmakers and try and create something that can be just as big.
Yeah, Blumhouse is another one, right? That we're kind of known for that, like creating IPs, and then somewhere along the way started trying to scoop up IPs.
Well, Blumhouse is doing this weird thing now that I've noticed where they're trying to make PG-13 horror movies. It feels like all their horror movies are sort of like really pulling back on the violence and the blood, and it's just off-screen kills or whatever. And it's just like, I understand for a profit perspective, but it's just like something like Imaginary, where it's just like a teddy bear as a murderer, but it doesn't really kill anybody. It's all kind of off screen. It just feels like something where they're just like, hey kids, why don't you try smoking cigarettes? Isn't it great? It just feels like they're really reaching out, trying to just get kids into the horror movies that they can get into,
I think you're 100% right on that. 100% that there comes a time and a decision when they're like, let's make it PG-13 and get more butts and seats.
We need butts and seats.
Instead of just like, let it rip, man. Just let it rip, because that's going to be the big tell, right? I'm pretty sure. We know Maxxxine for a fact is going to be rated R, but like, what is A Quiet Place day one rating? PG-13.
It's got to be.
You said it right there.
Yeah.
So now, like, is it technically a head-to-head now when you have a PG-13 horror versus R horror?
It is a head-to-head, because
but it's like
not everyone can get into the R movie,
right? So like they're gonna get not only the people that go to A Quiet Place, you're gonna get the people that try to go in to see Maxxxine, they can't see it, so by default they're gonna go see A Quiet Place. Which again, I got no heat with this prequel. I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious. I'm gonna see. We're alphas. We're gonna see both, but it's not really going to be a fair head-to-head, because traditionally when they say we're putting on that R rating, that you're not going to make as much. It's like a submission of that, that only, Jesus Christ and Deadpool and Neo were able to overcome.
I know we say this, right? But Deadpool's about to make $1 billion as an R.
Yeah. And everybody's kind of looking at that, right? Because it's just like he always made the joke that, the passion of the Christ was the only thing that could stop him. Like, could that be now? And then I was like, oh man, what movies on the ropes here? Maybe he's not going to be able to pull off getting that big box office. But then, Inside Out 2 comes out, and just like a shot of adrenaline in theaters, cosplaying and people showing up. I sent you a shot of the Cinemark site that they put me in a queue, that they by default. Like, we'll let you look at movies in 10 minutes.
I will make a prediction right now. The biggest movie of all time to ever be released from Pixar is going to be Toy Story 5.
Toy Story 5. You might
Toy
be
Story
right.
5 is going to be the biggest thing ever. I guarantee it. Because it's just, I was telling you, everything that was Pixar before that got released in the theater first is sort of like is a more important property than anything that went straight to Disney Plus.
Man, I think you're right because you're 100% that theatrical feeling.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of people that put Toy Story 3 up there as just like one of the best films of all, not just the best Pixar. Like, people just kind of really hold that in high regards, which is hard to pull off for just another installment from a studio that before they were purchased by Disney said that we'll never make sequels. We're going to just make original properties. And somewhere along the way, they changed their mind, and all their next films have done really well. So I will not challenge you on that because it's going to hit all the right marks, and it doesn't have the stink of streaming. I think that, as you called it. The stink of streaming can't be shook. People,
there's no shame in streaming. It's a fine medium, and they have fine products. But we can't pretend that it's equal to a film released in the theaters. You have to stop pretending that's a thing.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. Yeah, and again, I have no heat with streamings, but if I had my druthers, I'd be seeing it in theaters first. But I'm not going to hold it against it.
I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it, but if you haven't, I think you should check it out. Sometime you need something to watch with, maybe with the wife or maybe some whatever. It's a fine film on Netflix, The Hitman by Rick Linklater. It's a charming movie released straight to Netflix that I think if it had been released in theaters with a big marketing push, could have been one of the best rom-coms ever. But instead, because it's relegated to streaming, as Glenn Powell said, it doesn't affect the culture.
Oh man, and I feel like him, right along with Sydney Sweeney, they're teetering on that stardom.
Yeah,
like I would put him in there too. You feel like he's about to have that one role that really catapults him.
Netflix could have been it. Hitman should have been it. Hitman should have been it. He is so over in this movie. It's unbelievable. How great he is in this movie. And Adria Arjona, oh my God, she should be in every film from now on after that movie. But because that film went straight to Netflix with no sis boom ba, it just becomes another Netflix movie. And I'm against that. I'm against that.
And and they're just Netflix. One thing that they have is money. And they're like, as an actor and somebody like him that's on that tier, and he's just like, he rolls the dice, and like, it might not affect the culture, but it's gonna, for his brand, people are gonna see him, realize that he's the lead, and somewhere along the way they're gonna be like, oh, he's that guy in that Netflix movie, and maybe that is what puts him over the top. But like you said, it's a different thing, right? We release, we realized that the release straight to video back then used to be something that was like a bad word. Like, it went straight to video,
DTV.
Talking about, direct. It's like Project Greenlight. I think I told you about that when, that was a whole episode of just like, I really think you should get this in a couple of theaters, because they just like realized that if you just do it straight to video, it might not have the same thing. And now, it's a different experience, but it's not necessarily because it's not a good film. But like you said, not affecting it. But back on Maxxxine, I pulled this up, and I'm curious where you think, because as much as we love X, right, it had $1 million budget, and I think it only cracked, and it only made 15 or 16 million.
I mean, right? That's really good if it had $1 million budget. That's actually
really that's good. What I mean, right? It's 15 times its budget. You're not going to complain about that. But top R-rated movie of all time: Passion of the Christ 370, Deadpool 363 million, American Sniper, Joker, Oppenheimer, It, Deadpool. It's a lot of IPs in there, a lot of known stuff. You don't even get to any kind of technically original film based on nothing or a person until you hit The Exorcist, which is all the way down at 12. And that was stood the test of time for a long time before all those 12 films came ahead of it. And now we're talking about the Matrix movies, the Hangover movies, the It movies, the Deadpool movies, Oppenheimer and American Sniper based on historical characters, Joker based on a DC character. It would be awesome to see. I would love for this one to have a run. To get in there and at least crack in there. I don't even know where Pearl is, where she landed on, because I don't even know if that budget was a little bigger or not.
I bet it was about the same.
Yeah, and it made 10 million. So still, like you said, if it was about the same, it probably made 10 times its money back.
Yeah.
And it always reminds me of that saying that you said, and we heard someone else saying it. You give me $20 million, I'm not going to make one $20 million movie. I'm going to make $21 million movies.
Yeah.
Man, if you became that studio that just did that, and you were able to roll out stuff like X and Pearl and Maxxxine, I mean, you're a hero because you're making this money back. It's not, you're here. People love these stories. People still talk about the Blair Witch Project, and Paranormal Activity. And sure, they happen to have like a gimmick that made that, but it was just like, it just goes to show, like, they stayed in pop culture, zeitgeist, and people's head, that you still talk about that to this day more than you talk about these giant budgeted movies that don't always hit. Like, there's more movies that had 100x the budget of all these films we just talked about, and they just went by without a whimper. Like,
no one ever says, "Hey, have you seen Iron Man 2?"
Exactly.
Have you seen it? It's got this one part in it where Iron Man's sitting on a donut. No one ever says that.
You're 100% right, and and no heat to the actors. I know, they got to eat too. They're going for their, got to get that paycheck. But man,
you can't.
It's kind of like the football players when you talk about, do you want to make paycheck or do you want to make history? Yeah. Do you want to, do you want a payroll or do you want legacy? Like, what's more important to you?
Yeah, I mean, do you want to be in a $100 million bomb or a $10 million surprise hit?
Oh, man.
Pick your poison.
Yeah.
Pick your poison. Look, you're going to go on this $10 million movie. You probably don't even have to work the whole time. You work a couple of days on the movie, boost its profile, get a cut, get some of those sweet, sweet points, right?
Yeah.
And if it's a hit, it's a hit. If it's not a hit, no one ever sees it. What's the risk?
Yeah, and it just,
come on.
Yeah, there's no.
If you make a $200 million Dr. Dolittle movie and it bombs, everybody knows.
Yeah, and they still bring that up with RDJ, right? They still bring up that he left Iron Man and became Dr. Dolittle, and we saw how that turned out.
Exactly.
Just like, no, man, I'd rather hear the story of Donald Pleasance. We got a little bit of money. We can only shoot him for 3 days, so let's get it all in now. And look at that. And now he's synonymous with that franchise. And, maybe later he came back for the checks and stuff, but I was like, man, you had Donald Pleasance. He rolled the dice. He lifted the pedigree of the film, and it just added so much, and he probably made a shit ton of money for it.
For sure. But
last thing I want to talk about with Maxxxine, and it would have been an interesting experiment, but it probably wouldn't have worked. But man, I hope maybe they would just do one straight for streaming later on. How about an NC-17 Maxxxine?
Well, it depends on what the rating of the movie is now.
Right? Like I think it's going to be R. But like, man, I would love to, we filmed an R version and we filmed an NC-17 version, right? And they could have did that with X too. Like Pearl, maybe not so much, but like X, right? They were in the.
What would be the differences?
It would just give it a little bit, man. That just like. It just feels hardcore when you say I'm NC-17. It was like wearing an EC F&W shirt back in the day. Like, that makes it just feel a little bit like, man, that's hardcore.
They don't care about ratings.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's because I was just happened to click on that, and you know, still sitting at the number one spot for NC-17 movies is The Last Tango in Paris, filmed in 1973, with $36 million. But Showgirls tried, and it made $20 million back in 1995.
Showgirls is a classic film that we should discuss often.
Yeah, 100%. We got to do a whole show on Showgirls.
I love Showgirls so much. Not in a camp way. I just think it's a great, great movie.
Yeah, no, I think again, that's another movie I think that if you revisit, it was just a little too hardcore for its time, and maybe that's why people were shook by it. But I think it would find its audience now. You know, and I feel like it is, right? Because
it's an A24 movie today.
Is it?
It would be an A24 movie that they would put 100%. Out. Would be Showgirls.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like the lead actress, Jessie from Saved by the Bell, there's a story about her. There's like she really was shying away from it, and now she's seeing all the love it's getting as time goes on, and she's finally kind of coming around to like, oh, you guys aren't pulling my leg. You guys really do appreciate this film and love this film.
Oh yeah.
And I just love that about cinema, man.
I love hearing Quentin Tarantino's Showgirls review because he loves it so much, and he has beef with one scene, and he's absolutely right. Like he calls out the one scene that ruins it, and just like that makes so much sense. That's why I love that dude. He's just such a filmophile that he can respect Showgirls, and when he calls out what's bad about it, he's absolutely right.
Yeah, you know, he doesn't pull his punches, whether it's performances, actors, scenes.
But he just knows exactly. He's not a BS artist. You know what I mean? He's not pretending to understand films, or he really, really gets them.
You know, it's funny compared to now, and I just saw a recent interview with, I don't know if you saw all the whole Terrence Howard stuff. Speaking of Iron Man, and just like coming out like with these, you know, science papers and talking about quantum physics.
I did see that.
And then you had Neil deGrasse Tyson, who actually came out with a rebuttal, and he showed the paper that Terrence showed, and he showed his notes in red, and he's like, I wasn't doing this to be mean. I'm just like a scientist, and I'm just like, when it's peer reviewed, that's what you expect from your peers. So like sometimes they're not going to try to make you feel good about why they're going to tell you why this isn't right. They're just going to give you the scientific answer. That's Quentin Tarantino with films.
Right.
Like they'll let it blurt out. It's like, that was a horrible performance, but you were great in this.
It's like you wrote a screenplay and you give it to your closest friends and say, please, what do you think? Give me notes. Yeah. Give me notes.
Good.
You don't want to hear just like, you got it done. You want to hear people to really dig in and tell you what they didn't like about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I don't know how I feel about like the, the pre-screenings for films, and then you give notes and then you do that. And I know they're doing it to kind of hedge their bets. But that being said, it is the same thing with scripts. When you get you get somebody to like break it down and help you. But sometimes it's like, you don't always have to take the exact note, but at least it kind of goes in your head and makes you double check, triple check, right? Measure twice, cut once.
Well, it's like this. It's like if you get a note, the idea is not to do what the note says, but to understand what it is about what you're trying to say or do in your film that this person didn't get. It's not that they don't get it, it's that you didn't explain it right. So you have to take those notes, internalize them, and look at it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What am I saying? How am I not communicating my point across correctly?
Right?
If you do that, you can be...
Makes you think about it, and that's not a bad thing, to make you double check. Did I lock the door? Did I leave the iron on? Could stop a house from burning down, and you can stop your career from burning down. So I say go for it, man. But yeah, dude, let's I'm good. I would love to do this again, and we talk about Maxxxine when we see it, because we're like in this time in 2 weeks, right? With today's, well, technically now it's Wednesday, right?
Yes.
meet back into, well, we'll still have other shows before that, but like another screening of just like straight out of, let's walk out of the, you'll already had seen it by now, but I want to walk right out of Maxxxine and kind of do the same thing, and just love to put a bow on this and just give Ty West all his flowers.
I'm into it.
And hope he sticks to, but I'm confident he's going to stick the landing. But I mean, I guess it's always possible that he doesn't, but I can't see.
No, I think it's going to work out great. I cannot wait. After seeing that first 5 minutes, I feel safe. We're in good hands.
Yeah, that really did feel right. Like you said, the shot choice, the scene choice, how strong was that? Like how confident you are. Like just show the first 5 minutes. I don't need you to jump ahead. Just put the hook right out there, because it was a great hook. It connected to Pearl and X perfectly after just sitting there. So let's do it again in 2 weeks. And
all right, in 2 weeks we'll be back post Maxxxine screening. Come back. If you're still on, viewers, why don't you subscribe? Give us a like, give us a sub. We need it. And
yeah, like,
we'll see you then.
Subscribe, share, and if you're on X or if you're on Insta, just follow the link in our profile and jump over and give us some sub love. We would definitely appreciate that. But yeah, until next time, I was going to come up with a line that
Don't do it.
said.
Don't do
I'm
it.
not going to do it. I don't want to ruin it.
Don't do it. Just say
sh-
goodbye, friends.
Yes, goodbye, friends.